Hello, 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 hello. Father Aaron here with the Advent Gospel Challenge Day 14. I'm a little late in the day, so my apologies for how backlit I am. That's due to this being 3:45 in the afternoon rather than a little earlier. Um, so, 14th day, 14th chapter. Oh, this is going to be one of those chapters where Luke has gathered together stories about Jesus, things that he said, aphorisms, parables. I ain't really parables. Um, well, yeah, some parables. But some small things, and just put them together. Whether Jesus said all of this in one, you know, in one scene, as it were, or not. Um, Uncertain, lost to time, etc. Luke has assembled them because he sees connectivity between them. He sees some through line. So finding what that through line is as much about finding out what Luke is about as it is of what Jesus is about, right? But one presumes Luke, being close to events, although not front row, but close to events, would have some idea of what was happening. So we have, I love this, again, at the beginning of these little things. On one occasion, when Jesus was going to the house of a leader of the Pharisees to eat a meal on the Sabbath, just on one occasion. So this is another Sabbath healing. Someone with dropsy is seen, and Jesus, before doing the healing, normally he does the healing, people respond, Jesus answers them. In this case, he anticipates it by asking, is it lawful to cure on the Sabbath? And no one says anything. So he goes ahead and he does the healing. And then he goes on to say, if one of you has a child or an ox that has fallen into the well, wouldn't you get them out? Right. So he's anticipating the objections ahead of time. And then we have stories about the dinner. This is the, if don't take the places of honor, sit at a lower place so then you can be called up higher. Our budgie has something to say about that. Why the budgie is so intense on the 14th chapter of St. Luke, but she is. So the story about the not really a story, is advice about seeking the lower place and being invited up higher. Seek out the humble. Be humble. Place yourself lower than you, even though you think you ought to be. Let others go before you. This is, in some sense, the foundation of how a civilized society works. If we are constantly after our rights and grabbing after our rights to the exclusion of others, especially, then it is an extraordinarily competitive world in which there probably won't be many winners. Monks live this in extremis. They seek to be lower than the other, at least ideally. Monks are humans too, right? And he goes so far as to tell the person who invited him, you shouldn't invite your friends and other people of equal status because they can pay you back. Invite the poor because they can't pay you back. And so then your act is of pure generosity. Now, obviously, this is the kind of thing that is meant to teach a deeper lesson. I don't think Jesus is saying never have dinner with your friends. Don't have dinner with your family. I think what Jesus is using this as a means to teach that the acts of kindness and generosity you do ought not be done for the sake of being repaid, right? Budgies love it. I don't know why. That's a budgie that is on fire for the gospel. There are a number of stories collected here. You can read them. I don't need to run through all of them. What I will say is that near the end, he begins to talk again about the price of following and saying that who doesn't hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even life itself cannot be my disciple. Now, hate, the use here isn't in this sort of active, aggressive hatred. It is more of an indifference. Now, you don't want to be indifferent to your family either. What does he mean? Anyone who holds on to the relationships of this world, the things of this world, who holds on to this world and puts their preference there, can't be following Jesus, because Jesus is going to turn people against one another. It proves to be true. We find it today as much as in history. And he is going to the cross, right? He is not a leader for this world, right? When Pilate asks, are you a king? It's, my kingdom isn't of this world, right? This is not where my power is exercised. So I don't think it is Jesus telling you to start stirring up, beef between you and your family members. But it is about where do we place our ultimate hope? And that is for oneself, but also for one's family members. Do we hold our children as ours and we want them and we want to be the most important relationship? Or do we hold them in trust for God? Do we hold our children in trust for God and hope for them a future beyond this world? Finally, ending this chapter, he has the famous salt is good, but if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is fit neither for the soil, which would have been a punishment against a city that rebelled or stood against the king or whatever, and you'd salt the land, and then crops wouldn't be able to grow there for some years until the salt soaked in and was filtered out through the groundwater, and the soil was clean and healthy again. So it was a punishment. So it's not even suitable for doing that. It doesn't have any salt left in it, right? Or for the manure pile. So it's not even worth throwing on the manure pile. I have to say right now, I have not looked up historically why you would salt a manure pile. If anyone knows, put it in the comments. What a strange thing to do. It is fit neither for the soil nor the manure pile. They throw it away. Let anyone with ears to hear listen. Remember that Jesus has called his followers salt and yeast, right? The small something that affects the whole. Right? A little bit of yeast leavens a whole loaf of bread. A little bit of salt gives flavor to a meal or can preserve a meal. No one sits down to a meal and says, oh, I love this salt. Do you want a little steak with your salt? Oh, yes, please. A little bit of steak on top of my salt. No, the salt is the small thing that brings out the flavor of the rest of the meal. It's the small thing that can preserve food, right? It doesn't become the dominant thing. It is a small thing that helps to give flavor, to preserve, etc. So if the church loses its saltiness, and saltiness has come to mean, well, kind of a number of things. It can mean sort of being a bit spicy, a bit rough around the edges. It can also mean crying tears of salt. But unless the church stays salty, it's not going to do the world any good. So if we speak the same words as the world, if all we offer the world is another version of what they're already saying, just packaged maybe in some Jesus-y words, then what's the point? Why are we bothering? If all we tell the world is the same thing that the world is telling itself, what purpose do we serve? We have to bring something else. We have to bring something else, and it is a difficult teaching, a difficult teaching of Jesus, sometimes quite challenging. So, read your Bible, 14th chapter of the Gospel according to St. Luke. Find the salt in there for yourself. Season your life with it. And I will see you back here tomorrow, the 15th day.